welcome to the webinar of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security that is going to deal with the question, what next for Gaza? And this is a real question because I doubt if anybody knows what's next for Gaza, but we'll try to contend with this question based on the knowledge of three of our experts. We have with us Professor Efraim Inbar. By the way, my name is Yossi Kuperwasser. I'm the head of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. And I just replaced Efraim Inbar, who is the founder of the institute and used to be its president for quite a long time, 18.5 years, I believe, right, Efraim? I'm correct? Efraim is a senior research fellow at the Institute, remained as a senior research fellow at the Institute. At the same time, is the head of the program on strategy, diplomacy, and national security at the Shalem College. And Efraim will speak about the implications of the war in Gaza and the future of Gaza. So, Efraim, we'll start with you, and later on we'll be joined also by Professor Hillel Frisch. I'll present him when his turn will come, and with Professor Gabi Siboni. So I'm surrounded by three professors here. Come on, Efraim.
Thank you for the introduction. I will speak about the importance of victory and what does it mean in the war in Gaza. I will first would like to remind our audience, particularly those from abroad that are not fully familiar with the geography, that Gaza is a very small territory. It is 41 kilometers or 25 miles long stretch of coastal land along the Mediterranean. It is 6 to 12 kilometers wide, that's all. Its territory covers 365 square kilometers. It borders 51 kilometers with Israel, while it has a border with Egypt. People forget that Egypt is also a neighbor of Gaza of 11 kilometers. So it's a very small piece of territory. And we'll look first at the balance sheet of the almost 2 years war in Gaza. I think most people are a bit frustrated that it takes so long. Of course, it is urban warfare which prolongs the war. Also, Israel is facing subterranean warfare, which is unusual and maybe unique. Israel also suffered from the Biden administration that interfered in the conduct of the war, but still we feel we should have been concluded. What is the balance sheet? Hamas is no longer an immediate threat, military threat to Israel and to its people. That's quite clear. Israel destroyed capabilities to produce and launch missiles. Hamas is no longer close to Israel border. It cannot initiate, it attacks on Israeli settlements along the border. It lost about 10 to 20,000, don't know exactly, Hamas terrorists, and thousands of them are wounded. Hamas lost 70 to 75% of its ruled territory of the Gaza Strip, and it controls only basically the Gaza city. Although we see renewed military presence by Hamas in some areas that IDF holds, maybe Khan Yunis is an example, due to the subterranean infrastructure. We also see massive dislocation of Gazans to humanitarian areas. We see destruction of Gaza towns and neighborhoods because almost every other house has a shaft leading into a tunnel, and they are military targets. But Hamas still rules Gaza City. maybe 700,000 Gazans are still in the city under the rule of of Hamas. And I think that Gazans, Hamas can still claim victory. The Mukawama, the resistance, survived for 2 years almost the attack by Israel, which is the strongest military power in the Middle East. It reduced the power of Hezbollah. It destroyed the Iranian nuclear infrastructure. And Hamas still fights back. It's obvious that Hamas wins the propaganda war, the media war. They had a very successful starvation campaign. I think many people listen to the claims of that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. It has many diplomatic successes. Just at the UN, a resolution was passed by over 170 states supporting a Palestinian state and the right of return, which is basically the demographic destruction of the state of Israel. Also, it is successful in increasing the isolation of Israel in the international arena. At the strategic level, probably its greatest success was triggering a multi-front war against Israel. This is part of the Palestinian strategic thinking from the very beginning. Already in the 60s, they wrote and spoke about the detonation theory, basically bringing in other Arab actors against Israel as a result of Palestinian actions. Is the current situation victory for Israel? I don't think so. I think at this point, we cannot claim victory. This war is not a boxing match where you can win by points. Here you need a knockout. Unfortunately, we have military officers and political leaders that suffer from strategic myopia. And they believe that we did well, we can stop the war. From a historic perspective, the losing side in a war, in a battle, leaves the battlefield. Hamas should leave Gaza. This is what should be the military goal and the political goal. The victory picture is ships taking Hamas terrorists to another destination, be it Turkey, Algeria, Qatar. We really don't care. This is the picture that is very similar to what happened to the PLO in 1982 in Lebanon. Then ships took 14,000 PLO fighters and they departed by ships to Tunis. This should be emulated. The final, and people don't understand that the final perception of who won the war will be determined in Gaza. Without the eviction of Hamas, which is an unequivocal victory, Israel lost the war. My colleague, Professor Gabi Siboni, will tell you how to do it militarily. One aspect is crystal clear, at least. Israel is running out of time. The world doesn't like long wars. I want to bring to your attention that Yitzhak Rabin, the Prime Minister and Defense Minister, admitted once that he ordered military actions that entailed more Israeli casualties in order to achieve military goals quickly because of the political clock, because of the international arena. I doubt to have a time for siege, which some military analysts prefer. We need a swift frontal attack to achieve victory. And victory, I'll try to elaborate a little bit, is needed at 3 levels. At the bilateral level, vis-a-vis the Palestinians, at the regional level, the Middle East, basically, and at the global level. Hamas on October 7 the attack was not an additional round. It was a brazen attack to trigger a multi-front war to eliminate Israel. As I noted, this is part of the traditional strategic Palestinian thinking. In 2023, the ring of fire was supposed to be, that was established by Iran, was supposed to take part in the war, but according to our thinking, only cumulative defeats and Palestinian suffering will change the Palestinian position against the existence of the state of Israel. Unfortunately for Israel and for the region, the learning curve of the Palestinians is very slow. And despite of repeated defeats, they still hold on to the goal of destroying the Jewish state. Therefore, a military defeat, as I described, should prove once again Israeli determination to fight and to take losses and to suffer pain if necessary in this long war with the Palestinians. In war, there are two equations. One who can inflict more pain, and obviously we can do that. But there is another equation who can take more pain. And Hamas, Hezbollah, propagate an image of a weak Israel. We remember the spider web image, metaphor, the rifts in Israel, the political rifts in Israel, the obsession, general obsession with the hostages in Israel seem to confirm this image. We have to dispel those beliefs, and only a clear victory in Gaza can be useful in this task. A victory expelling Hamas is needed for a possible transition to the day after, whatever that means. I'm not sure what the day after will be. Maybe my colleague Hillel Frisch will elaborate on that. But if there is no day after, if Hamas still is with a military presence in Gaza, nobody will come in. Nobody will take the chance to be an object of terrorism for Hamas. Victory is also needed to open Gaza to international press, to prove there was no genocide, no starvation, to prove, to see with their own eyes that every house, almost every house, has an entrance to a tunnel which was built by Hamas. At the regional level, Israel has to defeat Hamas, which is an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood organization. Gaza took over a territory. It's only MB, Muslim Brotherhood offshoot, that took a territory next to Israel. Gaza under Hamas is a stepping stone for the destruction of Israel. Historically, Gaza was the venue for invasions. And it continues to be so unless it is somehow pacified. Defeat of Hamas also strengthens the regimes of those states that have peace treaties with us: Egypt, Jordan, the Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco. All of those states see the Muslim Brotherhood as a disruptive political force and a danger to their regimes and to the stability in the Middle East. We do them a favor, and doesn't matter what they are saying. We know that they want the defeat of Hamas. The defeat of Hamas will also strengthen the peace accords, because they are a disruptive force, and they continue the tensions, military tensions with Israel. It will be much easier for the Emirates, for Bahrain, for Morocco to live with Israel without Hamas interfering in the relationship. Defeat of Hamas also robs Qatar, of the mediator role and weakens this sheikdom, which propagates anti-Israeli, anti-Western Muslim Brotherhood messages. Al Jazeera is basically a voice of the Muslim Brotherhood, which is paid by, organized by Qatar. People in the West do not realize the negative role of Qatar in world politics. A defeat of Hamas would also prevent the East Mediterranean into becoming an Islamic lake. Gaza on the shore of the Mediterranean, Turkey on the shore of the Mediterranean, and Erdogan is basically a Muslim Brotherhood fellow, a Turkish version of the Muslim Brotherhood. Turkey is a strong state with a long shore along the Mediterranean, and if changes in Syria and in Lebanon will not succeed, and we cannot be sure that they will succeed, I have my doubts about it, then we'll see the whole shore, Turkey, Syria, Lebanon, Gaza, being ruled by Islamic actors. And we shouldn't forget that in Egypt, the strongest political force is still the Muslim Brotherhood. Fortunately, Assisi is not bothered too much by democratic rules and fights the Muslim Brotherhood in his country. I think also that a defeat of Hamas is crucial for preempting the rise of the Sunni radical axis, which is taking place particularly after the weakening of the Shiite radical axis. Turkey under Erdogan, Turkey a strong country, with the help or financial help of Qatar and Al Jazeera, might become a much more disturbing force in this area than Shiite Iran and the Shiite proxy. At the international level, a defeat of Hamas will discourage the radical Muslims beyond the Middle East. Islamists in Europe, in South and Southeast Asia, we have countries like Bangladesh, Indonesia, Malaya, in which Turkish activists are cooperating with local Islamist radical forces. A Israeli victory over Hamas also will discourage the Red-Green alliance in the West. And it will be a victory for the Western civilization against the modern barbarians. And we should not underestimate the barbarism of radical Islam, be it Sunni or Shia. A victory of Israel will give hope to the conservative camp in the West and to the values of nationalism. We are a nationalist state. In many quarters in the West, nationalism is a bad word. We should encourage the evaluation, the esteem given to the nationalist idea. And this we can do by victory over Hamas. The Israeli victory over Hamas will be a clear and loud answer to the demonstrators in the Western capitals and campuses. There is nothing like a military victory. The history is written by military victors. Yet we should be under no illusion. Hamas is popular, not only among the Palestinians. It is popular because its goal is the destruction of the Jewish state. the enemies of the Western civilization identify correctly that Israel is a bastion of Western civilization in this area. And it is based on Judeo-Christian values. Israel stands for truth and morality, which are anathema to moral relativism and fanatic Islam. Therefore, we have no choice but to fight hardly, with little concern, or maybe I exaggerate, but with moderate concern about casualties in Gaza, and finish finally the job we started on October 7th. Thank you.
Well, Efraim, you convinced me at least with all these arguments in favor of victory in Gaza. But let's see how we are going to get there. And for that purpose, to see how this job should be done, should be put to an end, we have with us Professor Gabi Siboni, who's joined us in the meanwhile. Gabi was the director of the Military and Strategic Affairs Program and Cyber Affairs at INSS until a couple of years ago. And he's a senior consultant for the IDF and other security apparatuses in Israel. And in his prime, was the commander of the Golani Special Unit. So it's this is we still see that when he speaks about military issues, he has these bright eyes, as you can see now. Gabi, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Am I heard okay? I don't know if I chose the right microphone.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're fine.
Thank you. Just to remind you, today we mark 30 years for Oslo, and apparently it is my birthday, my Gregorian calendar birthday today. So it's
Congratulations.
I'm sorry to get there.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Look, the issue Efraim have specified why we need a decisive victory in Gaza. And I will try to describe how we should get there. Of course, we understand the importance of the victory. Efraim, I don't want to repeat that. Efraim did this job perfectly. Now the IDF is intensing in a very slow pace, I must say, its fires attacks in Gaza as a preparation for the ground maneuver, and also to convince the population to evacuate the area for their own population, for their own protection. Because this is something we have to understand. Fighting in the city of Gaza with the population there will cause many casualties in the population. And we must convince them to evacuate the area for their own protection. Now, in humanitarian aid is provided outside of the area of Gaza, south to what we call the Netzarim corridor. And we encourage through the IDF spokesman and also our officials and Prime Minister and the Minister of Defense that we have asked the population of Gaza to evacuate and to go south. Now, I don't know if you've seen the pictures from Gaza of this population going to the south. I think the difference between the evacuation now of this area and the evacuation in the beginning of the war, almost a couple of years ago, is that you see that they move south with all their belongings, whatever they can put on any vehicle or car or whatever. Because I think now they understand that in the past, mind you, they were very light movement. So they assumed they could go back, which they did. But now I think they understand that this is final. They will be unable to go back because of what will happen in Gaza. Now, to be able to conduct this operation, we must impose siege on the city of Gaza. Now, together with my colleague in the institute, the researcher, Brigadier General Erez Winner, we have analyzed the legal and operational aspects of siege to find that siege is a commonly used practice according to international law. And of course, operationally speaking, it is very important. It will help weaken Hamas and help achieve our goal in a shorter time. Now, imposing a siege is not yet been done completely because, as you maybe very well know, we still supply water to the city of Gaza. And while Hamas have been storing humanitarian aid in tons and maybe thousands of tons in Gaza and in storage places in Gaza, water is a little bit more tricky to store a lot. This is one we did not do yet. I advocate that to our decision makers to do it, but we are reluctant of doing it because of the position of our legal advisor to the IDF, which is completely, in my view, and as I analyzed also together with Erez, completely, it's a ridiculous view of the international law that is given to our Chief of the General Staff. However, he adopted this view, and the government seems to be adopting this view as well. Now, if we are unable to impose an effective siege, it will make life much difficult in Gaza for the ground maneuver. We must do it, and I think we are pushing the government and the IDF decision makers to impose this kind of siege. We do not want to starve the population. The population will be provided with full humanitarian support south of the Netzarim corridor, south of the Gaza city, and with full medical and whatever is we must provide through our obligation according to the international law norms. So we are doing it, and we will do it. And this has to be done. But however, you have to understand that if some of your population is not willing to evacuate the area for any reason, we are going to conduct the maneuver, and we are going to apply what we call the proportionality principle of the international law, which means proportionality principle allows understand that non-involved casualties are sometimes must be taken, and but the principle requires that this kind of casualties are within proportion to the military objective. So that's what we will do if some of the population will not evacuate the area. Now, this is one point. To conduct our maneuver in Gaza, we slowly but surely will start moving our troops to Gaza from all directions, and to start, let's say, hitting Hamas the best way we can with our fires and direct fire that we will shoot in Gaza. Normally, when such a maneuver is conducted, we use let's say a principle of fires. What we call it a fire's curtain that is moving ahead to the soldiers. So the soldiers arrive to the area where it is with less objection. Now, you have to understand that Gaza, and also Gaza City, is full of booby traps, full of explosives, full of terror infrastructure, above and underground. And this is what we need to deal with. So our goal, so the IDF was reluctant to conduct this. It was published, so I can say it. It was reluctant to and propose some kind of a different approach, whatever, you know, to surround Gaza. Something that completely is I don't understand the operational logic, how you win the war like this. But anyway, the government and the cabinet has determined our goals. And I also advocate that we need to determine a very simple goal in Gaza. We require an unconditional surrender of Hamas. Unconditional. No conditions. No the ceasefire, no this kind of talks that we had. It's the same approach that the Allies have imposed on Nazi Germany, which they have requested unconditional surrender, and they achieved unconditional surrender. You have to understand that this war is compatible to the Second World War of Britain and the Allies, but mainly Britain. And this is our Second World War, and people are saying how it takes so long for a variety of reasons. Anyway, as Efraim also mentioned, we will be willing to fight this war until the final victory, until the absolute victory that was requested, as Roosevelt said, after the attack on Pearl Harbor. So this is our goal, and I think the IDF will achieve it because we are able to achieve it. Now, to fully, let's say, support our operation, we need to bomb all food and water reservoir in Gaza City, in the Gaza town, and to make sure that Hamas is not able to use all the reservoirs they have accumulated through the months and the years of the war. And this has to be done also as part of the job. So we need to go, as I mentioned, to have an effective siege, to destroy whatever supply that exists for Hamas in Gaza, to evacuate the population outside of this area, and to conduct a very aggressive maneuver. Regarding the hostages, I just want to finish with that. There is no way to release our hostages. We have reached to a point that only force, this is the only way. So I don't know how will we do it, how maybe they will be put in risk. It's possible. But also our soldiers are put in risk. And also throughout all our history, every time we needed to rescue kidnaps, let's say in Entebbe, or in Savoy Hotel, or in Maalot terror attack, and a variety of, we had many incidents. Nachshon Waxman, who was also kidnapped. We have put in risk our hostages and our kidnapped captives, and also our soldiers. So this will be the same here. We don't have any other choice. There is no way to conduct this war and to find a way to put the kidnapped, our kidnapped or our hostages in a bubble of cotton in Gaza. There is no way. We have to conduct our operation and to achieve our goals. And as I mentioned, to achieve unconditional surrender from Hamas, this will be the quickest and the best way to release our hostages too. So with this point, I will, I'll stop my lecture.
Thank you very much, Gabi. I didn't mention that Gabi is also the colonel. So somehow I missed that. Colonel reserve.
And I will also mention that I was throughout the whole year of 2024. I was together with the Brigadier General, who was the head of planning for the South Command, and I was under his command for the whole year in the Southern Command. Thank you.
Yes. Professor Hillel Frisch is an emeritus professor for Middle Eastern contemporary history at the Bar-Ilan University, and also, as I said, a research fellow, senior research fellow at the Institute, the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. And he wants to speak about how Gaza is going to look like after Hamas. So let's hear that. Hillel, the floor is yours.
Okay. What will Gaza look like after Hamas? I'd like to begin actually with the question, what will Gaza look like if we don't go after Hamas? So the cost will increase exponentially beyond what we have paid for up to now. Once again, we will pay the price of withdrawal and failed containment versus direct engagement and defeat of the enemy. So you can ask, what's the difference? Just reflect on the different outcomes between what happened in Judea and Samaria since 2002, when at the height of Arafat's war against Israel, in which Israel adopted an aggressive strategy of destroying the sanctuary areas known as Area A, the major cities and its environs, and offensive policing since then, and what transpired in Gaza up to now, using the contrary policy of containment. Well, 1,700 Israelis have so far been killed in Gaza versus 500 in Jerusalem and Samaria since 2005, the year Israel withdrew from Gaza and finished destroying the PA terrorist infrastructure in Judea and Samaria. 20,000 missiles versus none. Look at the strategic implications of these figures. Because of Gaza violence, there was many closings of Israel's international airport, closure of region-wide educational institutions during the bouts of fighting in 2008, 9, 2014, 2021, and of course, for many months after the savage October attack, the death of tourism, military outlays related to calling up reserves. Calling up reserves is sometimes something like 8 times more expensive than using drafted soldiers. The expansive use of expensive weapon systems, fighter jets and drones, armor, artillery, defensive systems like Iron Dome, international criticism and legitimacy problems, and of course, in the recent war, the expensive removal of 70,000 civilians for over a year at the government's expense. Little to none of this occurred as a result of ruling over the Judea and Samaria, despite the fact that the Palestinian population in Judea and Samaria is 1/3 higher than in Gaza. And take note, the PA's contribution to this state of affairs was paltry. And then there's, of course, the social costs. Now, even when policing, after we did away with the sanctuary areas in 2002, we basically mowed the grass through policing. And that proved insufficient in the first few months of this, of the second year of the war in Gaza. So what did we do? We developed permanent bases in the partially destroyed refugee camps in Jenin, Tul Karim, and Al-Farah near Tubas, and it was all relatively cheap and unproblematic. The contrast will become even greater and more costly if Hamas is not defeated. Should Israel not finish off Hamas, it will be the major beneficiary. Hamas will be the major beneficiary of the rebuilding of Gaza, from which it will derive hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of revenue, and siphon off housing materials to rebuild and expand its vast underground metro, which the IDF has been dealing with for 2 years. So you can just imagine what the size of that metro after the rebuilding of a much more destroyed Gaza. Nevertheless, many in Israel's opposition call for the end of the war in the hope that the day after will see the establishment of a PA-dominated body backed up by moderate Arab states. This is sheer delusion. Now, why the role of these countries, the moderate Arab states, is so crucial to their argument is because they know that the PA is so weak. Twice the PA was given the opportunity to deal with the Hamas threat in Jenin after Operation Guardian of the Wall in May 2021, and even more so in the first months after the October 7 massacres. Twice the authorities suffered a crushing failure in a city of about 55,000 people. It is clear then that the PA will not be able to deal with Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Gaza with a population 30 times larger or even more than in the city of Jenin. Only the crucial policing role of the moderate Arab states, according to Israel's opposition, can render PA rule in Gaza viable. The problem is that these states are not at all prepared to play the role that the Israeli government's opponents at home have assigned them for the day after in Gaza. The special conference of the Arab League that convened in early March this year, with the presence and consent of all the moderate states, in the section that focused on the day after in Gaza, 2 moderate Arab states, the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan and Egypt, were content to train PA police forces to ensure security in Gaza. Much help will that do. There is not a single word about the willingness of these countries to contribute their own forces to ensuring security in Gaza after IDF withdrawal, which these countries have demanded elsewhere in the document. On the contrary, in the same section, the League members emphasize that security, and I quote, is an exclusive Palestinian responsibility to be managed by the legitimate Palestinian institutions. And somewhat in contradiction to that, if there is to be a non-Palestinian security presence at all, then, quote, it will consist of international forces under the auspices of the UN Security Council during the transitional period until the realization of the 2-state solution. I mean, this is a statement being made when UNIFIL is now going to be dismembered in Lebanon, this 12,000 man force that never succeeded in keeping Hezbollah out of the Lebanese south. And if anyone expected these countries to change their position since then they are in for a bitter disappointment when they read a declaration in August this year that involved not only Arab countries but also non-Arab Muslim countries led by Turkey, and with all the moderate Arab states being signatory to it: Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and of course the Palestinian Authority. Once again, we see repeated condemnations against Israel for crimes it supposedly committed in Gaza, while completely ignoring Hamas, which is not mentioned in the document, and without any confrontation or commitment on the part of the signatory countries to provide internal security in Gaza and minimal security for Israel after the withdrawal of its forces from Gaza. Of course, worse still is the two-state solution, which will probably mean handing over the state and its capabilities to Hamas in some future election on a silver platter. This is basically an expansion of Giora Island's discredited model of an enhancing Hamas rule in Gaza in the hope that governance will trump their ideological vision of destroying Israel. They said the same thing about Hitler in the early 30s. Then, of course, there is the Trump Riviera plan, certainly the best alternative for Israel. But Ari Heistein and JISS researcher Daniel Rakov seriously doubt it can come to pass, and even argue, I don't think convincingly, that it should not come to pass. It is true then, there is no alternative, at least in the immediate aftermath of Hamas defeat, to establish a military government, since containment will obviously fail. It won't be that costly, and Gabi Siboni wrote about it. The international agencies love the Palestinians. They love living in northern Tel Aviv and commuting to Palestine in Gaza, and they will provide for them. The Gazans will also provide for themselves because they're tremendous, they're wonderful workers, they're wonderful agriculturalists, and they can compete in the marketplace given a chance. Going back to pre-2000 days probably means a costlier Israeli presence in Gaza than in JS, in Judea and Samaria. There's no doubt that Israelis will be in the military government will be killed, but it will be far cheaper than the price Israel has paid giving up its military presence in Gaza, and certainly the price it will pay if it doesn't achieve victory. As Moshe Dayan eloquently expressed it in his eulogy for the murdered fighter farmer Roy Rothberg in April 1956, nearly 7 years ago, looking at Gaza through rosy glasses is hardly the solution. I quote, "The young Roy who left Tel Aviv to build his home at the gates of Gaza to be a wall for us was blinded by the light in his heart, and he did not see the flash of the sword. The yearning for peace deafened his ears, and he did not hear the voice of murder waiting in ambush. The gates of Gaza weighed too heavily on his shoulders and overcame him." End of quote. We must overcome to avoid being overwhelmed. Thank you.
Thank you, Hillel. So let me say a few words about it too. Just one mentioning of remark that we had here that refers to Gabi's presentation and says that the siege should include also the cutting off the internet in Gaza so that they will not be able to communicate and spread their lies and about what's happening in the city. But a couple of words about what's happening now. I think that the impression you get from all those three presentations that we heard is very clear. We need the victory because of very wide array of reasons. Some of them presented by Efraim in length, some of them presented by Hillel also in length, and we are all aware of the reasons why we need victory. But I think beyond those reasons, what is most important now from Israeli point of view, when we look at the strategic goals of Israel at this point, if we want to ever guarantee our security and our ability to prosper, we need a victory. And we need to, on the one hand, weaken up to the point of defeating the evil axis of led by Iran. And then that we have made very considerable progress, although there are many challenges still ahead of us. And we need to make sure that everybody understands that the 7th of October attack on Israel was a huge mistake. Take it from the Pretty Woman movie. A huge mistake. And that everybody realizes that repeating this mistake is a no-go. And the way to convince everybody that this is the case is only by defeating Hamas. We have to do it while taking care of and doing everything in order to release the hostages and making sure that they are not hit. We might not be successful, but we have to make an utmost effort to make it happen. We have to make it happen while keeping in the friendship with the United States and the cooperation and the strategic cooperation with the United States unharmed. That's very important. We have Secretary Rubio here, and we have to make sure that we understand what is that concerns the United States, to make sure that we don't lose our friends in Washington. We have to make sure that we keep the kind of special relationships we have with some Arab states, Egypt, Jordan, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, that were mentioned here again and again. We have to make sure that we keep a certain level of understanding also from the rest of the West that is very upset with us. Some of them are very upset with us, to the point that they take all kinds of really annoying steps, like what was mentioned here about the recognition of the Palestinian state and promoting an idea that is totally detached from reality, that the PA is going to rule over Gaza. And we have to make sure that we fulfill the goals of the war as were decided upon by the Israeli government. First, defeating Hamas militarily, defeating Hamas from a governmental point of view. This has to be accomplished because of all the reasons mentioned here. Secondly, doing everything in order to release the hostages. And third, to make sure that Gaza will never be a launching pad for attacks on Israel, like the ones we had on October 7th. And this cannot be achieved without a clear victory, a decisive victory over Hamas. And this is something we all have to remember. Now, what is the best way to accomplish it? I think what Gabi mentioned here is a reasonable way to make it happen. But I think that if we manage to convince Hamas, inside Gaza especially, but also outside of Gaza, that the alternative for defeat for them is going to be a military taking over by Israel that would bring about the killing of each and every one of them and removing Hamas from power by force, there is still a chance, and that's what the Israeli government was trying to do for the last 2 years. There's still a chance that the last moment Hamas will say, okay, we understand that there's no other option, so let us at least save our souls and go to Algeria. The chances that this is going to happen are very slim. It's not that they are big, they are considerable, but there's still a little chance that this is going to happen. And we are trying our best in order to make it happen and give Hamas an opportunity to choose this option. This is the option that is presented to them by the last offer of President Trump, that release the hostages and we shall not give you a guarantee that this is the end of the war, and you can work out some agreement about what happens next. And in return, you get the release of many Palestinian terrorists from jail, and you can save your souls. It's, if this is going to be possible, Israel will take it, in my mind, even though it's less of a decisive victory as we can have in the battlefield itself. But as Gabi said, it has to be clear understanding of Hamas that they have been defeated. They have to have to go through an unconditional defeat, and that is what we need to accomplish. It's not going to be easy. The prices might be considerable, but the alternatives, as Hillel described so eloquently, are much more problematic than the price paid through taking over Gaza. Once we take Gaza over, then the only option that can be implemented on the ground, because of all the reasons mentioned here, is the military rule through civil administration executed by the military. But this shouldn't be a permanent situation. This should be a temporary situation for the least time that we need to do it. If I cannot foresee that it's going to take less than a year and a half or something like that, because it has to end with the feeling of the Gazans that are still left in Gaza if they don't choose to leave by their own will, that Hamas is not only defeated and out of Gaza, but that Hamas is not coming back. And this is going to be quite difficult to convince them. Anyhow, Israel should have the overriding military responsibility for what's happening in Gaza and fighting terrorism that may emerge from Gaza again at any given time. It has to keep in its disposal and under its control the perimeter surrounding Gaza from Israel's border that is, as Efraim said, 51 kilometers long. And it has to keep control of the Philadelphia corridor to make sure that in the future those people of Gaza that are going to be left there are not going to be able to be arming themselves through the weapons coming from Egypt as they did throughout the years before the war on October 7th. And just imagine how many arms they have gathered that we, after fighting for 2 years, they still have quite a considerable amount of arms to fight with. This is amazing. But for another terror campaign like we experienced in October 7th, because Israel cannot sustain another 7th of October. This is out of the question for Israel. The impact of 7th of October on the Israeli self-confidence was immense, and we cannot allow another 7th of October to ever happen again. And thank you very much, Efraim, Gabi, and Hillel, for your presentations. I think they were very interesting, and we shall call it a webinar at 9 o'clock as promised. Thank you very much.
Thank you.